Alright, baseball fans, let's talk about the New York Mets. A team with sky-high expectations, a massive payroll, and a fan base that is absolutely desperate for a winner after years of, well, being the Mets. And right now, a month into the season, while they've had their moments and shown some fight, there's a whole lot of drama swirling around Queens, centered on their two biggest, most talked about stars, Juan Soto and Pete Alonso. It feels like a team navigating choppy waters, even when they manage to pull out a win. Let's start with Juan Soto. The acquisition of Soto this past offseason was met with incredible excitement. He was supposed to be the difference maker, the superstar bat arriving to elevate the lineup, justify the massive investment and the high hopes. But so far, at least when it comes to doing what he's most known for, smashing balls across the stands for extra base hits and home runs, he's been relatively silent. Soto himself has admitted it, saying, "I'm still not at the point that I want to be. But I've been feeling better little by little every day." Now, Mets fans have been here before. They experienced the frustration of Francisco Lindor's slow start after his big contract. And after all the spending and the hype, fans didn't want another player taking time to find his rhythm in April. They wanted an already red-hot, instantly impactful superstar. And when you acquire a player of Soto's caliber, with all the surrounding expectations, there's an implicit price tag attached, not just in salary but in the hope he represents. But here's where the narrative gets interesting. While Soto's bat hasn't been on fire, he proved in a recent game against the Philadelphia Phillies that a superstar finds ways to impact the game, even when their primary tool isn't clicking. In the 8th inning of a tense, tied 2-2 game, with 2 outs and runners on base, Phillies hitter Max Kepler laced what looked like a go-ahead single into right field. The game, and potentially the series momentum, felt like it was about to slip away. But Juan Soto charged the ball, scooped it cleanly, and unleashed a throw towards home plate. It wasn't a perfect throw, maybe a little offline, but catcher Hayden Senger made a fantastic adjustment, reaching out and snagging the ball just in time to tag Nick Castellanos before he could score. Citi Field erupted. That throw was Soto's first outfield assist as a Met, and it was incredibly clutch. A game-saving play in a critical moment. Manager Carlos Mendoza was clearly impressed, praising Soto for getting behind the ball and making a well-executed one-hop throw, and Senger for the crucial tag. That defensive stand allowed the Mets to hold on, push the game into extra innings, and eventually win the game on a walk-off single by Starling Marte. Securing a sweep, Soto, despite going just 1 for 4 with a strikeout at the plate in that game, still ended up being a hero. He summed it up perfectly himself, saying, "It's always great to have some role and play a part in the game. I'm trying my best to come through with the bat, but whenever that doesn't come through, I have to do something else to help." And he sure did. That fighting spirit is a positive sign for the team as a whole. However, even that thrilling win and Soto's defensive heroics can't entirely overshadow the other major concern looming over Citi Field: the uncertain future of Pete Alonso. Alonso is the undisputed face of the franchise, a beloved slugger whose power and personality have endeared him to the fanbase. Last offseason, there was a lot of noise about his future, and fan pressure, including chants of, "We want Pete," seemed to play a role in him remaining with the team. But his long-term future is still very much up in the air. Pete Alonso holds a player option for the 2026 season. And virtually everyone around baseball knows what that means, unless something significant changes. He is almost certainly going to opt out of that deal when the time comes and test the waters of free agency, looking for a long-term, high-value contract. That's why many Mets fans have been desperately hoping the front office would make a move now, this season, and lock him up with a long-term extension before he hits the open market and potentially walks away for nothing. But according to insiders, like veteran baseball reporter Jon Heyman, that long-term extension doesn't appear likely to happen anytime soon, at least not during the season. Heyman reported on a livestream that he doesn't think we're going to get news on an Alonso extension during the season. And the primary reason? Money. Specifically the luxury tax. The Mets, under owner Steve Cohen, are operating deep into the highest tier of the luxury tax, what's sometimes called the Steve Cohen tax, facing a penalty rate of 110% on every dollar over the threshold. Heyman explained the financial reality, even for Steve Cohen, who has shown a willingness to spend unprecedented amounts. There are limits, particularly when it comes to adding to the current year's payroll burden mid-season. If the Mets were to give Alonso a long-term deal now, estimated to be around $35 million per year, Heyman points out, you're adding another $5 million this year. Plus the tax. Even Steve Cohen has limits. So I don't see that happening. Adding millions to the current year's luxury tax penalty for an in-season extension is a cost even Cohen might be hesitant to incur. Furthermore, Heyman reported another potential factor. The Mets front office is reportedly not interested in handing out long-term deals to players who are nearing their 30s. Alonso is currently 30 years old. So, this reported philosophy adds another major hurdle to getting a long-term deal done. This creates a precarious situation. What some are calling a trade crisis. If the Mets aren't going to engage in serious extension talks with their star first baseman this season, particularly before the trade deadline in July, the risk of losing him for nothing in free agency becomes very real. And if that risk is too high, the team might be faced with the incredibly difficult, and for fans, devastating decision of trading the face of their franchise. That looms as a major cloud over the season. So, you have Juan Soto, the highly anticipated new superstar whose bat is cold but who's showing he can contribute in other ways, waiting to get red hot, as fans are surely hoping for. And you have Pete Alonso, the beloved homegrown star whose future is uncertain due to luxury tax implications and the team's reported contract philosophy. With the specter of a potential trade hanging in the air, this is what happens when a team shows resilience and fight on the field, battling for wins like that extra inning thriller, but is simultaneously grappling with significant underlying dramas surrounding their key players. These storylines add layers of complexity and anxiety to the Mets season. And how they ultimately resolve will heavily influence not just the team's performance, but the emotional state of the fanbase throughout 2025. Alright, Mets fans, the team is playing well, sitting high in the power rankings we just talked about, and there's definitely excitement at Citi Field. But if you're looking closely, there are also a couple of big storylines, maybe even some drama, involving their star players. First, let's talk about Juan Soto, the guy the Mets paid a reported $765 million for. Everyone expected him to come in and immediately be the offensive difference maker. And while he's contributing, his bat hasn't been as red hot as fans were hoping for right away. Soto himself admitted he's still not at the point that I want to be with his hitting, though he's feeling better gradually. Fans, understandably, don't want another slow April start like they saw with Lindor a couple of years ago. They want the superstar hitting machine they paid for. But besides Soto trying to find his rhythm offensively, there's another major concern looming, and that's Pete Alonso. Fans fought to keep him here this offseason, chanting, "We want Pete," and he's back at first base. But his future with the Mets is still incredibly uncertain. Alonso holds a player option for 2026, and everyone expects him to opt out and test the free agent market when the time comes. That has fans desperate for the front office to sign him to a long-term extension now. However, according to insider Jon Heyman, that long-term extension for Alonso is unlikely to happen this season. Heyman pointed out that the Mets are deep into the luxury tax, the Steve Cohen tax zone, at 110%. And even with Steve Cohen's resources, there are limits. Giving Alonso a new deal at, say, $35 million a year right now would mean adding another $5 million to this year's payroll plus that hefty tax on top of it. Heyman suggests that's a hurdle even for Cohen. On top of the luxury tax, there are also reports that the Mets front office is hesitant to give out long-term deals to players who are approaching their 30s, which Alonso is. So, keeping the polar bear long-term seems to be facing significant challenges. Now, going back to Soto, while his bat wasn't crushing it in that recent game against the Phillies that the Mets eventually won in extras, he showed exactly why he's still a game-changer. In a tense tie game in the 8th, he made a crucial game-saving play, charging a ball hit to right field and unleashing a throw home to nail the runner at the plate. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. He delivered when the team needed him defensively, proving, in his own words, that when the bat isn't working, he has to do something else to help. So, That's the complex picture for the Mets right now. They're winning games, showing resilience, but they're also dealing with their massive offensive superstar trying to find his consistent hitting stroke while contributing defensively. And the growing, very real uncertainty about whether they can or will keep the face of their franchise. Pete Alonso. For the long haul because of financial and roster philosophy hurdles. It's a fascinating, and yes, dramatic early season in Queens. And fans are definitely hoping that Soto's bat heats up soon to match those clutch defensive moments.